Thank you very much, Kim. The next person I would like to introduce, it's an Italian psychologist named Paolo. Paolo is a member of PSBE. He's been with us for a while now. But Paolo is also part of the Coma Science group at the Université de Liège. And he's here for a primeur, like a historical moment, because they are starting the first clinical trial with psychedelics on humans in Belgium. So a big round of applause.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the super kind invitation. And yeah, so my talk is entitled Psychedelics to Treat Disorder of Consciousness. You already have heard quite a lot about the psychedelic and how they alter your consciousness. But I would like to take a step back before and to define for a second what is consciousness. And really in the clinical setting, what we think about consciousness is just the ability to have an experience. And you might take this for granted because we spend most of our time where we are fully aware of what we have in the surrounding and where we are hopefully not sleepy. I hope that right now that's the case as well. But actually in every night we experience something that's completely different from what we have now. When we go to bed and we fall asleep, we actually enter a state that's completely unconscious, where as framing the words of a very famous scientist, you and the universe surrounding you just disappear. Now this is true, of course, unless you're dreaming, in which case, from external observer, you're just laying back, unconscious, not moving, but deep inside in you have a universe, right? So what I think is really fascinating is that we are able to transition from one state to the other. And we experience these states every day. And scientists have really thought about what's the difference between conscious states, like when you're awake right now, or when you're dreaming, or states where you're basically feeling like in the deep sleep. So there's been quite some thought for some time. There's been a lot of theory, a lot of experiments, a lot of paperwork, and there is a common consensus that one smoking gun might be brain complexity. I think Mathieu has already referred to the concept of entropy. Here I want to talk about brain complexity as basically how variegated and how differentiated your brain activity is. What's fascinating is that brain complexity is always high in conscious states, like for example right now or when you're dreaming, while it is low in unconscious one, like think for example deep sleep, which is a state that is naturally occurring and it's reversible, a state like anesthesia that is induced and reversible. And so I really wouldn't like to be conscious while the surgeons are on me. But there are even states that are induced that might not be reversible, such as disorder of consciousness. And this is really the focus that I want to give in this talk. So what are disorder of consciousness? You can think about disorder of consciousness as an umbrella term to define a series of disorders that the patients may suffer after waking up of a coma. And you can see here some images of brain scans, and you can see there is a huge brain damage. So all the black parts, the black spots that you see, in healthy participant, there's all brain in there. And in this case, there's basically nothing so bad. So as I was saying, these patients wake up from coma, they open their eyes, but are not able to communicate. They're not able to use object. Some of them might just show reflexes, and this is actually the patient that have been for quite a long time known as a patient in vegetative state. Now we prefer to define them as a responsive and wakefulness syndrome, which is a little bit more descriptive. Or might show some small signs of consciousness, like a visual pursuit, for example, grasping. These are patients that are considered minimally conscious state. But the thing is that we really don't know what they're experiencing. And as far as we know, actually, their brain activity is so similar to the one that we might see in cases like sleep, that they might feel what we feel every night where we don't dream. That is nothing. When I'm taking attention on this particular disorder, at the end of the day, it's not so common because these are very massive damages. And you might think that we don't really should think about this as a society, but I don't think that's the case. Because when we talk about the DSC, we're talking about a disorder who has a terrible prognosis. There are some reports that say that patients in vegetative state die up to 80% in 1 year. On the other hand, there is a very, very big concern about the economical cost of hospitalizing this patient for some time because they need to be taken care of. And just to make you understand, there are some people that have even argued, I think with some sense actually, that we might want to allocate the resources that we give to this patient to others who might have more benefit in the long run. And finally, there is really, I think, a natural reason to as a society and as a species, to alleviate pain of these patients and their family, and to try to find a real solution to overcome one of the worst disorders that the current neurologist faces. We know, whatever the reason you want to take, that we have to do something, but we don't have yet a really effective medicine or treatment for these patients. Now, I imagine you're thinking, why is this guy talking about neurological disorders? right? At the end of the day, this is a symposium about psychedelics. Well, in the graph before, I've not shown you one part, which is, let's imagine that an healthy participant, like any of us, who is already conscious and has already quite a high brain complexity, will take up psychedelic. What will happen is that you will see that there is an increase of brain complexity that is even higher than the one that you see in the normal wakefulness. You see in the images of before material, that's where everything was hyper-connected. That's exactly what I was referring to. Now, if these drugs have these effects in a normal, in healthy participant, what would happen if we give them to an unconscious patient? In other words, could we increase the complexity in such a way to reach a critical point where patient might come back to what we consider something similar to wakefulness, to a conscious one? So basically, the part of the project, the PhD that I'm currently working on is exactly on that. It's just to investigate the psychedelic as a treatment for DSC. And here, I'm focusing mostly on ketamine and psilocybin. If we can discuss why that's the case for the sake of time. I'm not going too much into that. And what we are interested of is actually to look at brain signature, something that we can use that as a predictor for recovery or for efficiency of the substance. We're saying before, these drugs might not work to everyone, but we want to know who are the patients that can benefit the most from this experience. Yeah, sorry. Is it better now? Yeah. Okay. So here is just a particle about like the particle that we're going to implement. Oh wow, no, that's good. I should have spent more time with karaoke, you know. I always start like that. So in here you can see the particle that we are going to implement. We're going to enroll patients with disorder of consciousness, and through a week, we're going to basically record the brain activity in all the possible ways that we have, and we see the behavior. After that, they enter in an experimental phase where they basically are going to undergo 2 sessions, one with the drug and one with the placebo. And at the same time, we record the brain activity. I left how for the people that are interested, and we assess behavior repetitively. Now, brain activity, of course, it's useful for us to understand whether there is an increase of complexity. While for behavior, well, that's pretty obvious. I want to highlight 2 things here. First of all, that the experimenters are unaware whether the substance that has been given is a drug or it's placebo. And the second thing is that there is always a guide in the room in case these patients really would work up and have being present with us. And actually, I want to thank Paulina for this, and in the future, Lennart will join us for this experimentation. When we finish this experimental phase, of course, we will follow the health of this patient for up to 2 years. And this is for several reasons. First, to see the prognosis of the patient, and I think even more interestingly, to assess whether there are any memories or any reports, and to know what they were experienced during our session. So at the moment, we're actually, as you were seeing, piloting with ketamine, and we're actually going to present the results in next month in another conference. So we have the last patient for the piloting next week. So fingers crossed. Well, for psilocybin, we are currently undergoing the legislation to start doing the experiment, but we are hopefully this is under review now. We hope to make this happen by 2023. So what we're expecting, of course, is that the psychedelic should increase complexity in the DOC as they usually do in healthy controls, and when this happens, that we will have a new sense of consciousness, something that really shows us that the patient is there. And lastly, we expect, of course, to have differences of the brain of patients that do respond to our treatment, which means like again, new sense of consciousness and increased complexity, and the ones who don't. So to have just a quick summary about the protocol. What we have is basically the patient with disorder of consciousness and low brain complexity, to whom we will give ketamine or psilocybin, and we expect to have a high brain complexity and no sense of consciousness. In the same way, for example, as you would expect from a beloved one to awake after a shake if they are asleep. This is something that I'm going to work on in the future, but you probably already have understood from this moment that the lab work is never something that should be alone. So I want just to refer to Nigel, is actually here in the audience. He has not shaved, so it's easy to recognize. Whose work will be to translate all of this from a computational perspective. So we'll be using models and simulation to actually describe this transition and understand what is the mechanism that allows some patients to move from one state of unconsciousness to the one of consciousness. And lastly, there is the work of one of my supervisors, Charlotte Martial, who's used psychedelics actually to investigate our phenomena, like near-death experiences. And there is here a report where, from the phenomenological point of view, near-death experiences are very close to ketamine, and at least in the reports that the person did, and so there is a huge work about comparing these to other states of consciousness. So from all of this, I hope that you are a little bit more convinced that actually consciousness and brain complexity are very much linked one with another, and that unconscious states, like for example DOC, have low brain complexity. I hope that you will remember that psychedelics actually increase brain complexity in healthy participants, and if they do, we in the same thing in a patient with disorder of consciousness, well, then we might have a treatment finally for this fascinating population. And finally, I wanted just to say I'm really thankful because all of these sessions shows that there is an interest in understanding psychedelic and give it a place, not just in conscious sciences in general, but really in the scientific discussions. So, and this is a topic that's been taken very, very seriously lately. So with that one, just to thank all the lab for the incredible support, the supervisor for the funding, because otherwise I could not do any of these. Filament was providing psilocybin, and PSBE for inviting me. I'm very honored, and for helping us through all the stages of this, and Olivier for your attention. Thank you.